All right. Good evening and happy Tuesday. Welcome to Having a Catch. I've been looking forward to this episode since I started recording these. This is my friend David Rubin. David, how are you tonight?
Doing great, my friend. How you doing, Joe?
Doing good. Got my, I don't know if you can see, I'll kind of pan out here. I'm wearing my Keith Hernandez tonight.
Nice. I'm wearing franchise.
Tom Seaver.
Oh yeah.
So we got two Mets fans. We're going to talk it up tonight. And before we get to David and his story and talk a little baseball, I just want to remind everyone, because I really haven't mentioned this in a while. This Friday at I don't know, what time did I send you, David? 7 o'clock Central, 7:30. We're going to be streaming Game 6 of the 1986 World Series. So that's what people are going to see. And then anyone that wants to jump on camera is going to be on as well. David will be there.
Oh yeah.
John Keeney has expressed interest. Tim St. Clair. I might hop on for a little bit, but very much looking forward to that this Friday with our guest tonight, David Rubin. So, David, I've always wanted to ask you this. Now, obviously, I know you're from New York, and I'm not, but we're both Mets fans.
Yes.
So tell me your earliest memories of falling in love with this team.
Sure. You know, Joe, I find one of the greatest things about baseball, which really isn't as true in other sports. There's a oral, written, and printed history that is so deep, and it really starts with a kid having a catch with their dad, their mom, their grandpa, And for me, I lived in an apartment building in Woodhaven, Queens, so we were like 20 minutes from, not even 15 minutes from Shea. My dad had grown up in the 1930s, a Giants fan. He actually learned how to speak English listening to Giants broadcasts on the radio in one way. My grandfather was also a Giants fan. And the ironic thing, my dad lived in Brooklyn, and he was a Giants fan. And my grandfather lived in the Bronx, and he was a Giants fan, although Polo Grounds was much closer to where he lived than it was to my dad. So no Dodger fans in the house, no Yankee fans in the house. So I was the first grandchild, and I was my dad's first child, and I was the first boy to my grandfather because he had three daughters. So he was itching to be able to have a catch with his first grandson. So at the age of 3, I got a wiffle ball bat and a wiffle ball, and I started throwing it around. I loved it. Couldn't do much with it, except almost knock the TV out. But it was just fun. And my grandfather, who lived in the building across the way, we lived in an apartment building. They call it co-op. And the only thing between the buildings was like a walkway, right? We're on the same side of the street. So every day I would see my grandfather and grandma. During baseball season, I would run over with my mom. We'd run over to Poppy's house, and we'd sit down, and he'd sit in front of the TV. He had his can of beer and his soup right in front of the TV, like a stack table on a lazy boy. And he had a nice big color TV, what I thought was a big color TV. It was all box, small screen, right? And we would call it a piece of furniture today. So he would watch the Met games, and after coming home from work. So I would sit down at his side because I would literally, wherever my grandfather went, I'm convinced if he walked in the middle of a volcano, I would have followed him. So he sat down in front of the TV, and he would watch baseball games. Very first pitcher, very first player I ever remember is a guy on the wall behind me. Right there, number 30, Nolan Ryan. So we were watching baseball together, and Ryan was known as kind of a wild pitcher. You would go to Shea Stadium, and you would never know if he was going to relieve, start, if the ball was going to come in at the head of the umpire, the head of the batter. It was kind of crazy. And so I would sit at my grandfather's knees when we watched the game. And he said, "Hey, boy, this guy, his name is Nolan Ryan. No one knows where the ball's going to go when he lets it out of his hand. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to look close at that screen. He's got his hands on my shoulders. Remember, I'm sitting in front of him. So this guy is so wild that when he pitches, if you see that ball coming at you, I need you to duck." And sure enough, Nolan Ryan because the camera shot was straight on. They didn't have 13 cameras like they do today. They had two, right? One that went to the outfield, and one was over the pitcher's shoulder. So we see the catcher, his back, the back of the catcher's face as we see the pitcher coming at us. Ball comes in, and it's catcher's moving his mitt up, and as I see that, my grandfather yells, "Duck boy!" And so he pushes me down on the ground. And I was convinced that Nolan Ryan was so wild that the ball was going to come right out of the TV screen and hit me in the head. I was scared every time Nolan Ryan pitched after that. So I would come over and I would say, "Poppy, who's pitching today?" "It's not Nolan. It's not Nolan." This is 1967, mind you.
Okay.
It's not Nolan. So I'm like, okay, good. Now, what I did find is my dad would get almost teary-eyed enjoying a guy by the name of Tom Seaver. And Seaver was my dad's favorite pitcher from the get-go. That guy over there, that guy who is a big part of my memorabilia collection, he would almost get teary-eyed watching Seaver play because he would say, "I have the luxury and the honor of seeing one of the greatest to ever take the mound in my lifetime." Now, mind you, this is a man who saw Carl Hubble all the way to Sandy Koufax. And right away, he said there's just something about the way Seaver takes over the mound. And he's such a brainy pitcher that right from that rookie season, 1967, speaking of rookie seasons, there's his rookie card. Yeah. He just loved the way he commanded the mound and he took over. And you have to remember, Joe, we were a laughing stock. I mean, a laughing stock in baseball at that point, right? Mets were the biggest joke in Major League Baseball you can imagine. We stunk. And nobody took us seriously, including the players themselves. The biggest difference maker besides Tom Seaver was when the Mets brought in this guy, Gil Hodges, just elected to the Hall of Fame. Gil told everybody, "You're going to take the sport seriously. Everything is going to have an intention. You're not going out to take batting practice and just lollygagging. You're going to go up to the plate. You're going to work on something specific. You're going to have a purpose, and you're going to make it happen." And my dad loved that about this no-nonsense approach that the Mets started to take on from lovable loser. And, that gets old real quick, right? So from lovable loser to a serious team. And here's Tom Seaver. And I remember in 68, I actually went to my very first game, Nolan Ryan pitching against the Giants. But the first game that I really remember, Joe, was Tom Seaver pitching, taking the mound. And I can actually remember, because I don't remember the Ryan game as much, except I remember dropping a hot dog, believe it or not, at my dad's feet. But the first game I really remember was that Seaver game, and I have the stubs somewhere in here. It's in a box with some stubs. The grass just looked so green. Walking out of the low, we had low seats, but my dad wanted to take me all around Shea Stadium. And so even though we sat in loge, I remember going up to the mezzanine and just walking out. And there's something so special about that moment when you walk through Shea Stadium, you're walking through the tunnel, and all of a sudden you see the field in front of you, and you see that gorgeous green grass, and you see the outfield wall, and you see that scoreboard, and you see the seats everywhere. It smells different. It feels different. It's almost indescribable how amazing it is. Now imagine, a 4-year-old kid. It's like, we see the reaction to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory in the movie. It's that smell of that grass. It's that beautiful manicured field. And then all these guys who are on your baseball cards, they're there. They're in front of you. They're playing pepper. They're taking batting practice. They're throwing long tossing in the outfield. And these are the days when you can come in early and catch all this. And it's a big mistake, I think, baseball's making in not allowing all the batting practice to be seen and everything else. That's a story for another day. But I just remember watching all these athletes taking this so seriously, but still having fun. we have a lockout right now. We hear about the contracts, but just put all that aside and remember what's beautiful about this game. They're having fun. They're just having a catch. After that day coming home, I said to my dad, I want a baseball glove. I had like one of those little tiny kid, it almost looks like a 3-finger kind of glove, right? And so he got my first baseball glove. He had a Bobby Shantz Regent model that he had used since the 1950s. I got just a general Wilson glove, had no name on it. It was just a little kid's glove. But I remember taking so much time to put a ball in it and oiling it, wrapping rubber bands around it. I just wanted to play with it immediately, right? My dad said, no, we have to wait for this. We have to make sure that its pocket is created perfectly. It's all oiled up. Thinking back at it now, it taught patience, which helped, get through a 9-inning or a 12-inning or 15-inning game, right? You don't realize the lessons you're getting so early.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't play with that glove for 3 days. And finally, 3 days later, when we took the ball out and unwrapped it and just, mashed around my fist, and my dad showed me, look now, it had a pocket. You could actually catch a ball in it and it would stay, as opposed to when we first got it, if you threw a ball in it, it's popping out, right? So first lesson in patience in the baseball field. We went outside and we had a catch. Now, we lived in an apartment building at the time. So people would walk by, we'd have to stop and be, oh, come on. Where we were was almost all concrete. So we would have to walk to a park, and, it's tough. My dad was a school teacher and he worked, and my mom at that time had a 1-year-old, my younger brother. So you can't always get to the ball field the way you wanted to. My dad thought about that a lot. So a couple years later, we moved out to Long Island, where we had a house that had a huge front yard and a huge side yard and really nice place to play, lots of kids around. Never lacked for a game. And the side of my yard was so long that we made it into the local field for everybody. So at that point, my dad could have a catch with me every day when he came home from work. He went inside, changed his clothes a bit, got a quick snack, and we went outside. 30 minutes, 45 minutes, the greatest thing in the world, Joe. Just long tossing with my dad. And eventually I said to him, can I have your mitt? He said, not now, but you will earn this mitt. You will play your first year in Little League, and then you'll earn this mitt. Sure enough, I played my first year in Little League for a team called Ralph's Tackle in Island Park, New York. And I earned that mitt, and I still have it. It's in a box. I just realized that some of the laces were needing to be repaired again, but it's in a box wrapped up, and I'm intending this year to hopefully give it to my 6-year-old granddaughter. Hopefully
Nice.
that will be her first mitt. Yeah. And again, right, beauty of baseball, passing traditions down. My dad's favorite player was a guy by the name of Mel Ott, his first favorite player. Mel Ott was a little guy who, by today's standards, most would never look at him as being a home run hitter, right? Little guy, I think 5'9", brilliant baseball player, hit over 500 home runs, by the way, Satchel Paige, KC Monarchs. My dad was a memorabilia collector because I got him into it about 25 years before he passed. And for his 80th birthday, which unfortunately he died a couple months short of, but for his 80th birthday, I decided to get him 80 individual sports presents, something that would be important in his life, either represent a milestone or favorite player or something special. I went into an auction and I won something really, really, really special that unfortunately he never got to see, but this is actually a game-used, game-worn Mel Ott glove. You can see how old it is.
Mm-hmm.
I have it wrapped still so it doesn't denigrate anymore. It is displayed in a case with a Mel Ott signed bat and ball. and another Mellott signed team ball from when he managed the Giants. And it. I was a kid, 1960s. Who's Mellott to me, right? He's been dead, long since played. But because my dad loved him, I went to the public library and I looked up everything I could find about Mellott. And then Mellott became one of my favorite ball players. And looking up Mellott, I also learned a lot about other ball players, especially Negro League ball players. And I had, as you do, I share a great affinity for the Negro League ball players because I was raised in a household where anything that would separate people, especially based on something like skin color or religion, wasn't just frowned upon, but was um, I was taught about why it's so important to embrace everybody. You know, I am a minority. I lived in an area where everyone around us was a minority, and we didn't. Growing up in New York, you didn't see things like color and race and ethnicity. You saw your buddies, right? My dad grew up that way, even though where he grew up in Brooklyn was much more divided amongst nationalities. And so my dad used to go to the Negro League ball games, and he would sit in the sections with people who were colored. That's how they used to use the word colored sections back then. And there were water fountains that only people of color could utilize, etc. And one of his friends asked my dad, "Why do you sit in the section for coloreds only?" My dad said, "My skin has color to it also. I'm just like everybody else. I'm going to sit with everyone else." And that was the way he was. And he went to see some of his favorite ball players, Monty Irvin, as a later as a Giant for his favorite team, but he saw Monty playing with the Newark Eagles in particular. Loved Monty. When I met Monty years later, I told him that. But my dad actually got to see Babe Ruth as a coach. He actually met Babe Ruth, shook his hand, got an autograph. Met Satchel Paige outside of Yankee Stadium. Saw Josh Gibson play. And I had a passion to learn more about the Negro Leagues as a kid. Unfortunately, Joe, there weren't a lot of books. There weren't a lot of magazines, things get swept under the rug very easily, as we know. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until the book Only the Ball Was White where people started really delving into the Negro Leagues, the players. I would hear about Oscar Charlton from my dad. My dad never saw him play. That was even before his time. But I heard about this guy, Satchel Paige, who could throw, any ball. He's talking about the B-ball, but he talked about the gum wrapper on home plate, and how Satchel Paige could throw right across that gum wrapper 10 times in a row, about calling his outfielders in, And I remember we saw the movie Bingo Long and the Traveling All-Stars. And, the thing my dad said was they didn't get it even half right. Satchel Paige was so much better even than the pitcher on that team, right? He said incomparably great. The players on those teams, guys like Buck Leonard, who was like a Lou Gehrig, of the Negro Leagues. And there were so many great players who nobody knew about, weren't in the mainstream papers. So my dad inspired this curiosity that made me become a great collector and reader of baseball books and biographies. I've got a couple thousand of them. I have them all over my office. I have boxes in my garage. I have a walk-in closet that has literally an entire wall of bookcases filled with baseball books. It's that history, and you can spend your life reading about it. You can spend your life thinking about it, and you're never gonna scratch the surface. Someone's gonna come up with a name you never heard of, and then you're gonna, hey, let me grab a book about that. I mean, I've been to Lefty O'Doul's. I had eaten there years ago. I knew about him, but 2 or 3 years ago, a great book about Lefty O'Doul came out, and I bought it. I was like, oh my God, I never knew half the things now, or just from reading that one great book about him, one player versus tens of thousands have come through, those hallowed halls. It's a pretty remarkable thing. And I love that I've made lifelong friends from the game. I love that I can channel my dad, my grandfather, my brother. My brother found this great picture of us. The last game we went to at Shea Stadium. Don't know if you can see it. It's kind of small. Well, here. But that was
Nice. Yep.
from very late 1990s. And after that, my dad started a couple years later, like in the early 2000s, he started getting sick. So I wasn't able to go to baseball games very easily anymore. And in fact, this jersey, this is the 83 jersey, Tom Seaver, last year with the Mets when he came back to the Mets, right? And in 2004, the very last time I went on a trip with my dad, I came home from California and I said, Dad, I want to go with you. I want to take you to Cooperstown. I want to go to the Hall of Fame with you. I had gone once before, years ago, with him, but it was very brief. And we decided we were going to take a 2-day trip because I didn't know how much longer my dad had. You never know, right? The last trip we took together, he died 4 years later, but within a couple months, he started getting really sick and would never have been able to take the trip again. So we spent 2 days in Cooperstown having this amazing time. And it was not far from my birthday. And we went through all the great stores. And I saw this jersey. I said, oh, my God, Dad, that's Tom Seaver's jersey from 83. I said, yeah. And he said, go look around a bit. Go see what you like. And I did. And I went through. It was one of those long stores. And Mark knows the store intimately. You go through and you could find a million things that you want. And I went through, and by the time I had gotten up front again, my dad had a bag in his hand. And, yeah, he gave me this for my birthday that year. And I wear it proudly because it's Tom Seaver. I wear it proudly because my dad gave it to me. We got a really cool picture from that day. So if you've ever been to Cooperstown, there's 2 really great statues. One of Babe Ruth and one of Ted Williams. So my dad, having met Babe Ruth as a kid, he said, okay, let's take a picture in front of that Babe Ruth statue. So there's my dad. There's the statue, and he's wearing his New York Giants hat because he said, if we're going to Cooperstown and I'm going to see Willie's plaque and I'm going to see Monty's plaque and I'm going to see Carl Hubbell's plaque and I'm going to see Melot's plaque, I'm going to wear my New York Giants hat. And he did. And so, Joe, when I think about baseball and I think about the ability to give my collection to my grandson and granddaughter and my other grandson, the ability to pass it down, to give it to my next generation, but not just things, not just a thumper Ted Williams bat that I bought at Sears in 1974. That means nothing, right? But it was the first bat that I bought with my own money, and I still have it all these years later. Or the very first Tom Seaver baseball card I ever pulled out of a pack in 1971. I have it in this little holder still. It's in okay condition. That was a tough year for cards, but it was the first Tom Seaver I ever pulled out of a pack. Tom Seaver, Baseball is Your Life. This book was written by a guy by the name of Steve Jacobson, and I had Steve sign it. Why? Well, I grew up with Steve's son, Matt, as a kid. Steve used to, at our local synagogue, Steve used to come in and once or twice a year, and they had a pancake breakfast, and he would talk about baseball with everybody. And here it is, my hero. And my buddy's dad wrote, at that time, the definitive book about Tom Seaver.
Nice.
Yeah. And then years later, my grandmother passed away in 1988 in Queens. So I was going through, you know how every grandparent has like a junk drawer, right, where they put all their stuff, right? So I'm going through the junk drawer, and in the junk drawer, I find my grandfather bought me a copy of this that I still have. It's pretty beaten up, but I found this book, The Year the Mets Lost Last Place. And he must have purchased a couple of them because he had this one and he gave me one. But in this book was a little card. I'm going to see if we can see it. In that corner, there's the top one is an autograph of Satchel Paige. The middle one is Hank Greenberg. There's some Stan Musial and Ted Williams. But the middle one, in that row, the bottom one's Ted Williams. The one above that is Hank Greenberg. And in that frame is a card. And it says, "Best wishes, Hank Greenberg." He was a Bronx boy. He grew up in that area. My grandfather in 1946 happened to see Hank Greenberg. He was doing some kind of promotion or something. They didn't have photographs readily available and stuff like that. He grabbed an index card and he just said, "Can you please sign this?" Because Hank Greenberg was one of his heroes. Hank, and loved that with the Detroit Tigers, he would destroy the Yankees. So Hank signed it. And here I am looking through this junk drawer, and I pull out this book, and there's two things in it. That index card with Hank Greenberg and a photograph, which I'm not going to be able to show you because it's mounted on the wall, of this guy, Gil Hodges. My grandfather owned a Stride Right store, and in 1970, he won a promotion. He sold the most kids' shoes, I think Buster Brown shoes or something like that. They gave him a set of 4 autographs: Eddie Yost, Joe Pignatano, Rube Walker, and Gil Hodges. And they were legit autograph photos. I don't know what happened to the other 3 coaches, but I know that Gil's was in this book as well. So this little magic book that I found in the junk drawer with my grandparents, my grandfather meant to give it to me. He died in the early 70s. He meant to give it to me at some point. But there was Gil Hodges' autograph photo, Hank Greenberg's autograph card, and a book. Just like a little throwaway thing in a junk drawer, right? So, Joey, baseball permeates everything in my world. What I read, what I think about. Now, it's not my grandkids, it's not my wife, it's not my kids, but it may as well be a dependent, because the amount of money and time I've spent thinking about, dealing with, and loving baseball, it sure makes it an incredibly huge part of my life.
Yeah, baseball for me, I would say baseball and music and laughter are the 3 things in my life that have been in my life every day,
right,
as long as I can remember. There hasn't been a day that has gone by since, we'll say 1983 is when I fell in love with baseball, that I haven't had it on my mind for a good part of the day. And I listen to music every day and I try to laugh every day, but baseball has always been that one constant where, if I need a pick me up, it could be reading an old book. It could be like right now, for the last 2 years, creating these custom baseball cards, doing this, utopian project. It's been so important in my life that I couldn't even imagine. Like if I turned on the news one day and they said, "Oh, baseball, it's going away," I'm not talking about a lockout. I'm talking about like it's gone.
Right.
Like I wouldn't even know what to do.
Agreed. I think I would be in a fetal position in a ball in the corner, and my wife probably wouldn't be able to get me out of it. But let me ask you a question. Do you remember your first catch?
Yes, actually, I probably wrote about it in the book I wrote in 2008 called Two Loves. I think I start chapter 1 with my first catch, I think. Now, it's been 13 years, but I'll tell you about it. I'm from Brown Deer, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1981, we moved to a very small town just outside of the Wisconsin Dells called Mauston. And actually, for the whole time I lived there, I thought we lived in Boston. Because I would say, like, I would meet new friends when we moved to Brown Deer, and they said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Well, we just moved from Boston." And mom or grandma would correct me and say Mauston, Mauston. I thought we lived in Boston, Massachusetts, for a year, because I was like 6.
Right.
I didn't know from states or whatever geography, but anyway, we lived there, and my cousin Lisa lived in an even smaller town. I think they had maybe 500 a population of 500 called Linden Station. And it was pretty much all trailer homes.
Okay.
And I know that phrase gets a connotation like they were nice. Like
Yeah.
I would think about in 2022 buying something as nice as what they lived in.
Joe, there's a community right near me, and they start at $400,000 a pop with land and plus. So yeah, there were some beautiful ones. Yeah.
So my cousin Lisa, one day when I was living out in Boston, she took me to the park, and again, I had no idea what Major League Baseball was. Right. I had some packs of like Topps cards. So that's all I really knew of baseball was like these baseball cards, and I had like the 1981 sticker book.
Yeah.
You know, it had actually like page 1 was like the Dodgers and Yankees World Series, like foil cards. And so that's all I knew of it, but I didn't know much of the game. Anyway, she took me to the park one day, and this must be my earliest childhood memory because I can't recall anything before this, but we went to the park. We found this glove. It was a Wilson sitting next to, you know how like when you go to a park, they have like these kind of like mesh garbage.
Oh yeah.
You know, it almost just looks like furniture, if you will. It's, you know, there wasn't any garbage in it. So whether they just emptied it or whatever, there was this garbage mesh thing. And there was a glove, like, right next to it. And Lisa picked it up, and she put it on my left hand, and she said, "Does it fit?" And I said, "Yeah." And I'm looking at it, and I'm still trying to figure out, like, what's going on here. I like this, but, you know, what are we going to do with it? And I don't know if she had a ball or if we found a ball too, but she would throw me the ball, and I would catch it, and she would, you know, teach me to do this instead of this or whatever. And she made a promise to me that day. She said, "Now this is probably someone else's glove, so we're going to put it back where we found it." And, you know, the 6-year-old in me was like, "What? Like, we found it. This is ours."
My glove, right.
We actually put it right back, and she said, "We're going to come back here tomorrow, and if it's there, we're going to give it like 24 hours. You can take it home." And I swear to you, it was the first night in my life that I recall not being able to sleep. I actually went into her room and I said, "Is it 24 hours yet? Like, can we?" It's probably 3 in the morning.
Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
I kept thinking about it. And the next day, I don't know, just the way my brain worked, I just assumed it was going to be there.
Right.
And when we got there, sure enough, it was. And I looked up at her and she's like, "Yeah, go get it. It's, you know, it's been a day." Put it back on. We played with it again. And what I remember is when we got home, and it was broken in. It was an old glove. But to teach me where to catch it, she wrote the word "ouch" right in the pocket. She said, "This is where I want you to catch this." She wrote "ouch," and then, you know, smaller here and smaller here. She goes, "This is where you know." And that was it. I mean, I was hooked ever since then. And, you know, again, this is 81, 82. When we moved back to Brown Deer within the year, I was so enchanted with the glove and what I could do with it that I didn't even care about MLB. As a matter of fact, it wasn't even known as MLB. When we were kids, they didn't call it MLB. No. It was just baseball.
Right.
You know, it wasn't like a brand like NFL, NBA. It was just
right. That's only recent times.
Yeah, that's a recent thing. So the summer we moved back to Milwaukee, the Brewers were in the World Series, and I didn't watch a second of it. I was in the other room with my glove, making diving catches and pretending I was pitching. I'm not even emulating a Brewer, and the Mets weren't even in my lexicon yet. I had no idea. I was just playing with my glove and pretending to hit and doing all these things. And then the next morning, when the Brewers lost the World Series, we saw the newspaper, and I took a look at it, and it was Gorman Thomas on the front cover.
Yep, Stormy Gorman.
Struck out 10 the World Series. And even though it happened a day before, Mom looked at it, and she was kind of sad. And I said, what, did they win? And she says, no, they lost. And I was like, oh. But I still didn't have that connection to it until I guess it would have been maybe 18 months later.
Okay.
The next fall, I saw my first World Series game. I had, if it was 9 inches, I'm probably giving it more credit. I mean, it was a small black and white 9-inch, like a rectangular TV.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I watched the 83 series between the Orioles and Phillies. And at that point now, the baseball card collection got a little bigger. I think I had a couple books that maybe my grandma picked up at Kmart. And for whatever reason, I was a big Pete Rose fan.
Okay.
So when the Phillies and Orioles were in the World Series, I didn't watch an inning of the playoffs. I just knew, okay, well, this is the World Series. I was aware of what the World Series was because of that sticker book I had.
Right.
And because the Brewers were in it the previous year. And I watched that entire series. The Orioles won it, I think, in 5. So I was, kind of upset that the Phillies had lost, but not, like I wasn't a, quote, Phillies fan or anything. I just watched it.
You'll pardon me if I was happy the Phillies lost. Yeah.
But it really wasn't until May of '84. May of '84 is when I became a Mets fan.
Right.
And how is very trivial. Had it not been for the employee at Time Warner, it probably wouldn't have happened. I had my glove, same glove, was outside. They hooked up the cable. I walked in. He's, doing the installation or whatever. He sees the glove on my hand. He said, oh, you like baseball? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, let me show you something. He pulls out the TV guide. And back then it used to be like a digest, like it was small.
Yeah, there's a book a little bigger than this, but just thinner, yeah.
Pulls out a highlighter, goes to the baseball section or whatever, and he highlights every single baseball game. Braves, Mets, Cubs. Cubs, Mets, Braves, Cubs, White Sox, Mets, whatever. Well, my grandma, her husband, my grandfather, is from Brooklyn. And the Dodgers broke their heart when they left.
Right.
Then my grandfather moved to the Midwest, built a house in Brown Deer, became a Braves fan, and then the Braves left.
Right.
Braves broke their heart. So twice in 8 years, teams that my grandparents loved moved.
Oh.
So my grandma was very adamant. She's like, well, we're not going to root for this Atlanta Braves team.
Right.
And it seems like there was no lights, so the Cubs were all day games. So there were no Cubs games at night. So almost by default, I started watching the Mets every night. And I want to tell you, David, you're going to appreciate this because your dad loves Seaver, and I know you do too. I was this close in 1984 to becoming a White Sox fan. And I'll tell you why. He's not on Facebook. He's not going to see this, but I had a friend named Todd Esmundi. His 2 favorite players in 1984 were Tom Seaver and Carlton Fisk.
Nice.
So he would tell me, he would show me his cards and like, oh, I love these guys. And I think at that point, to be honest, and don't hold this against me, I didn't know Seaver was a Met until probably 86, when it was kind of a potential storyline.
Right.
Scully and Garagiola would kind of talk about it, like, oh, Seaver's not active, but what a story that would have been, this and that. But, back when I'm 9, 10 years old, peer pressure is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it could have been so easy for me to just hop on this White Sox thing because my friend, and Todd was probably the guy I spent most of the time with in 85, 86.
Right.
I actually got him to start liking Gooden and Strawberry and Carter and
Hernandez,
Hernandez and all that. And it
Lennon,
just,
yeah.
so I kept with my team, and he still liked the Sox, but like I could have, just given in and said, hey, I'm a White Sox guy. As it turns out, much later in life, after I became a father, the guy that is most important to my writing career was a professor at UW-Milwaukee named James Hazard, a huge White Sox fan.
Mm.
So we actually had plans to see a White Sox Brewers game. Sadly, he passed away in January. Before we were going to see the game, we had the tickets and everything. I ended up gifting them to his son, but it was close. This could have been a White Sox themed show tonight, David. So
Amazing. There, by the grace of Tom Seaver, goes you. Yes.
Exactly. Now, I want to ask you, if I'm doing the math correct,
Mm-hmm.
you were probably what, 6 in '69?
5, almost
5.
like, yeah.
So rather than have you recall something from that year, because again, my memories of having that glove, I was probably a year or two older than you were in '69. Mm-hmm. Share with me something from '86, because
Okay.
I mean, we're actually, you and I, we're gonna share Game 6 on Friday. We're gonna do that together, and I'm not gonna be able to get through that without crying. But walk me through that. Now, again, you would have been...
I was in college.
22?
Yeah, I was in college, Stony Brook University. By the way, from '69, truly the only thing I really remember was the ticker tape parade on the news.
Okay.
And how happy my dad and my grandfather were. They were dancing when the Mets won. And I just remember hearing the dreaded Orioles, right? '86, I was in school. And in my dorm, there were 6 of us, 4 New York products. My roommate was from Nigeria and thought nothing about baseball and would laugh that I had to run home in time and cut a class to make sure I was there for the World Series. And a guy who lived in Rhode Island. And, of course, living in Rhode Island, what team do you think you rooted for, Joe?
I'm going to guess the Sox.
You would be right. Big Sox fan. And we bet that he would have to clean the bathroom for a month. Now, 6 guys in college, men's bathroom. If the Mets won, I would have to clean the bathroom. And if the Sox won, if the Mets won, he would have to clean the bathroom. If the Sox won, I would have to clean it. I don't want to tell you how many nightmares I had during that series of having to clean up after 5 other guys for a while. But we were watching, and we ordered in pizza a couple times. In Game 7, we brought in Chinese food. And I had gone home. I went to one of the games. I had gone home for one of the games. So it was back and forth. Game 7, I really, really wanted to be home. But something the next day was going on. I forgot what it was, and I had to be in school. Classes aren't important. It had to be something important, like, my girlfriend needs, or whatever it was, right? And so we had to be there for Game 7. We ordered in Chinese food. We were watching the game and scared like hell, Mets losing, right? Because this is the first time I'm really cognizant of the Mets World Series and how long it had been since '69. And Mets win. I jump up and I'm screaming, in your face. I looked at my friend Stu from Rhode Island. I pointed in his face, and then I just saw his whole countenance just drop. This guy who was kind of heavy set, not tall, but big, broad-shouldered guy. If you looked at him, he slumped in his chair, and he was like 2 feet tall. And at the same time, I felt so ecstatic. My Mets team won. This Dwight Gooden, the greatest pitcher of my lifetime, the second best I've ever seen behind Seaver. Darryl Strawberry, he's going to break every record in the book. Keith Hernandez, the best fielder I ever saw, and Gary Carter, one of my personal heroes. This team won. And yet all I could do is look over at my buddy Stu. He was so devastated, right? And in that moment, as much as I was so happy, ecstatic, I just remember him being so down and so upset, so disappointed. So all these years later, as a Met fan, most years were feeling exactly like my buddy Stu, right? So I both remember this incredible feeling of being on top of the world, because there's nothing in this world like your team winning a Super Bowl or the NBA championship, especially not the World Series, right? Especially not that World Series coming on the heels of the greatest playoff game, in my opinion, greatest playoff series that ever happened. But here I am, literally the agony and the ecstasy, as they said on the Wide World of Sports. Here I am, total ecstasy, but yet my buddy's in agony, and it just. I kind of wish he wasn't there so it could be all ecstasy. But, the lesson you learn from that wasn't lost on me, especially now 36 years later, rooting for the first time for them to actually win a World Series all this time, right? So definite learning lesson, something that always remember, always take with me. Yeah.
Well, and Stu, you've got 4 now since then, so I think...
Yeah. Oh, he's not on Facebook. I looked him up a couple times also, but wherever he is right now, and I've lost touch, but wherever he is, I hope he remembers that, and hope he takes it there. Now I'm so pissed for being right. No, I'm kidding.
So, David, so what brought you out west? You're out in the Los Angeles area, correct?
I'm in LA, been out here for almost 30 years. My wife. Yeah. So, incredible lady. She had been married previously. She had 2 young daughters, and it was a lot easier. My whole world was in New York. My family, the Mets, the Giants, the Islanders, the Nets, the Knicks. No one in their right mind would ever think this guy would leave New York. I was a New Yorker through and through. I was so attached to everything that was New York, but especially the teams. And in 94, when I moved out here, 93 and 94, when it was happening, there was basically no internet. There was some email, right? Just starting the origins of AOL, but there wasn't really an internet the way we think now. There certainly wasn't a baseball package. And, I got very clever in how I learned how to get radio stations and found bars that actually had satellite dishes that would play Mets games. And I would get from watching 162 games a year, I went down about 40 or 50 for a couple of years there, until we got access, and then I worked in a sports bar, ran a sport bar, and I could watch every Met game every day, and found every spot in LA where you could catch a Met game. But as much as I regret not being able to see my mom and dad as much as I would have loved to, and my brother, and as much as I regret not being able to go to the 20 to 40 Met games a year that I used to do, I was lucky enough to be in a town where I had the Padres and the Dodgers. Now every 6 years, the Angels, and I love the Angels because of Nolan Ryan. That's a story for another day. And I can go to the Bay Area and watch the Mets out there. And if they're playing in Oakland, I can get them there too. Most importantly, I have an incredible wife, 2 beautiful daughters, and 4 grandkids. So I would say, all in all, it was damn worth it, and the best decision I ever made.
And I take it they're all Mets fans?
Interesting question. I think my marriage almost came to an end very quickly, a couple of years after we were together, because one of the kids who worked for me, her dad was an accountant for the Dodgers, big shot. Got us 4 seats behind home plate against the Mets. And we got there early, so batting practice, and I got the kids. I even bought them a couple of Dodgers souvenirs because, again, they're going to school in LA. But I still can't believe I spent money on a Dodger hat. But that's, again, a story for another day. Got lots of hot dogs and cotton candy and crack. Every piece of garbage a kid could eat and want. All of a sudden, the second inning comes, and I see them whispering back and forth with each other, and then whispering with my wife, then whispering back and forth, whispering. All of a sudden, my wife taps me on the shoulder. Yes. The girls would like to know if they can go home now. But second inning, are you kidding? I almost had an apoplexy right there. I almost exploded. And right there, I knew that neither one of my girls was ever going to be a baseball fan. So they humor their dear old dad. They know that they would never be a fan of another team, but they really didn't care about baseball very much. Now, my younger one, when she got married to a sports fan. Big sports fan. Loves the LA teams, but he was a Boston Red Sox fan because his brother was a Yankee fan. So he supported me loving the Mets. Incredible, incredible guy. And he said, you know, since you didn't have a son or daughter who loved baseball, I have no problem if you raise my kids as Mets fans, as long as they're allowed to also have Dodger stuff so they don't get, destroyed in school. I said, no problem. So rite of passage, every one of my kids, when they were about 3 months old, they got their first Met onesie, Met bibs, Met hats. In fact, all three of my grandkids that live near Southern California have this hat. I have a photo of a beautiful art photo of my two older ones with me wearing the Met hats together. It's one of my treasures. And yeah, they will be Met fans. Some people say it's child abuse and torture making them Met fans, but they have no choice. And I give them all this,
Nice.
I hope one day, I've been blogging about the Mets for a long time. Max Mets, MACKS, METS. I actually have a couple of articles coming out talking about next season, whatever happens in the next couple of weeks. Great site for all baseball fans. There's a side banner that has like all the updates and transactions, everything for all of baseball. But I'm hoping one day in the near future to take a bunch of the columns that I've written, the longer form ones, about what baseball meant to me, about what Pedro Martinez meant to me, about the Mets no-hitter, about Tom Seaver, and put them together into a book. And I think that would probably be the easiest way to explain to my grandkids how much baseball meant to me. And instead of giving them 2,000 books and 1,000 T-shirts and 150 hats and rooms full of memorabilia, if I hand them this book and they understand the relationship that I forged with my dad and my grandpa and the friends and how much it meant to me, and more than just the outcome of a single game, but having this love that I could share with people how much it meant, my hope is that maybe that will be the thing that makes them want to be baseball fans. And truthfully, Joey, I want them to be Mets fans, but if they love baseball and they're happy, adjusted kids, if it has to be Dodgers, it could be a lot worse fates, right? It could be the Yankees.
Well, I'm going to hold you to that book.
Yes.
And I'm putting myself down. I'm writing it down now for the first copy.
Deal. Actually, I have a great title.
Let's hear it.
It's from Mac Scarce to Max Scherzer, the exploits and lifetime of a crazy Mets fan.
I love it. Later tonight, if you can, put a link up for the blog.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Within the group, so we can take a look at some of the past contributions.
Definitely. And, Joe, I have to tell you one other thing. I want to prove my mom, my wife, and all those other naysayers wrong. All this money and time and effort I spent on sports over the years, it'll never pay off, well, not in my lifetime because I'm not selling anything that I have. Hopefully maybe one day it'll put my grandkids through school or something. But more importantly, after all these years, and some of your regular viewers know, I work for a fantasy sports company now, 401 Sports. So I actually get to take this passion for all sports that I've always had, this seed that was planted by my dad and my grandfather as a 3-year-old. And I'm actually, for the first time, able to make that into a career that I love, that I get to meet incredible people and share the fanaticism with. And I'm actually paid. I'm literally paid to watch on my big screen every minute of football, basketball, baseball, hockey, tennis, soccer, boxing, WNBA, you name it, on that TV as I can absorb. And believe me, I can absorb a lot. But it's literally, it's no longer just fun. It's now, after almost 58 years, it's now a career. So pretty awesome. Pretty awesome.
Where do I apply?
I'll let you know. As soon as we're hiring, brother. But you don't have to apply. You can go to the link and start playing and make money yourself. As we
You
all
guys,
know.
yes, go to the link. It's up. It's one of our pinned posts, the 401 Sports link. So basically, what 401 is going to do is they're going to give you, probably best that you explain this better than I, David.
Sure. They'll give you a referral bonus for signing up through my link. It's my give back to the Utopian baseball universe. Basically, it's a virtual stock market. There are some Mets up there, plenty of baseball players, a lot of basketball and football up there. We're actually doing something pretty exciting, and you're going to be the first to hear about this. It's not even been released yet. Starting next week, we're doing a big game, because you can't say the word Super Bowl, right? We're doing a big game sweepstakes kind of thing where you can temporarily buy shares of stock in all of the teams that are going to be in the playoffs, vying to be in the big game. So
The
you can
Superb
get
Owl.
What's that?
The Superb Owl.
The Superb Owl, right? Very well spoken. You'll be able to get, like, if you like the Packers, you can buy shares of Aaron Rodgers or Devontae Adams, or you could pick the field. And if your stock wins the MVP of the big game, it's $100 payout per share of stock you own. If your team or your player makes the Super Bowl, it's a $5 payout. There's all kinds of ways to make money with it. It's fantastic, and it's just for the playoffs. And so you're buying a virtual share of stock. It's fantasy sports. It's a lot of fun. You can sell it on the market if you think that, if your teams are all of a sudden and you're one of the last 4 teams in, and you've got 2 players from the Colts, and the Colts are going to make it, and you don't want to wait till the Super Bowl, you can try to sell and market just like our traditional virtual shares, or you can hold it all the way, hoping that if you got Aaron Rodgers and the Packers going all the way, that he's going to be the MVP of the Super Bowl. A lot of fun. It's a game within a game, so pretty cool. Take a look, 401 Sports, and I think you'll really enjoy yourself. We have a number of people from the universe already playing, loving it. Shout out to Geeker, as always. We're having a catch, right? So I want to throw you something.
All right, I'm ready.
It's a Bob Uecker Magic 8-ball.
Nice.
I always have my desk. And I keep asking it, is this the year the Mets are going to win the World Series? It says, ask again, things are murky. Keeps happening.
All right.
I'm telling you, man. Can't get a break even from Bob Uecker.
We'll just have to keep shaking that ball.
Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be a catch with David Rubin without picking your brain about the all-time Mets roster.
Okay.
So we have, I'd say, about 6 roster spots left for the Utopian Mets.
Okay.
So what I want to do is I'm going to share with you some of my thought process. We went from 30 to 40.
Right.
We added Tim Keefe from the American Association, pitched for the Mets.
Yep.
A couple
for the original Metropolitans.
The original Metropolitans.
Yeah.
Also making their debuts in 2022 for the Utopian Mets will be World Series MVP Ray Knight.
Nice.
Wally Backman.
Nice.
And then this is where I need your expertise. So, of course, to fill these rosters and to make it competitive, Gary Carter represents the Expos.
Right.
So on the Mets, we have a guy named Mike Piazza. Maybe people have heard of him.
The guy behind me?
Yeah. Light hitting catcher from Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So we have Piazza and we have Hundley catching. Who would a David Rubin add as a third catcher?
Okay. While his stats aren't going to knock you out, he was an incredible defensive catcher. His daughter is a wonderful, wonderful lady who's here on Facebook by the name of Cammie. I would say bring in a guy by the name of Duffy Dyer. He was a phenomenal backup to Jerry Grody all those years. And I think if Duffy had been starting on another team, while his offense might not have been sterling, his defense was incredible. Really a great pitcher's catcher. They love throwing to him, and just an all-around good guy. I'd love to see Duffy Dyer up there. Be easy to say Jerry Grody, but I think, you've got stars, right? We've got Piazza and Hundley. So you want someone to come in the 8th inning or 9th inning who's going to be a great defensive catcher, Mr. Duffy Dyer.
Dyer, and I actually met Don Dyer once. He was a coach for the Brewers, I believe,
Right.
in the early '90s. I want to say.
Yeah, he was.
And I actually worked at County Stadium right around the time he was coaching. So yeah, that would be that's a no-brainer. I think we're gonna
Awesome.
add Cammy's within the group too. So we're gonna add
Hey,
Dad to the
Cammy,
Mets.
shout out to you and your dad and your mom.
Do you have anything against me adding Lucas Studa because my daughter loved him?
Not at all. Again, if he would have just swung a couple times more, or figured out how to play first base, not hesitate. But he was one of those guys we all expected a lot more from, but still loved watching him play because at any moment that ball could go out of the ballpark, the parking lot, next. Yeah.
And I'm guessing, and this was, I guess, an oversight on my part, just because the Mets are such a pitching-rich organization. John Matlack has to be a no-brainer, right?
Yes, definitely. Rookie of the year. It's funny. He had 2 rookie cards. His initial rookie card was 1971. I think it was with Teddy Martinez and Rich Folks. He had a rookie card again in 72. It was with Leroy Stanton, who was traded to the Angels, and I forgot the third player on that card. But I asked my dad how come he had 2 years in a row he was a rookie. He said sometimes players can still be thought of as a rookie and just don't make it to the big league roster. So I remember in 72 when he made it and then was rookie of the year, I was so excited for him because now he didn't have to have a rookie card the following year. That was the excitement for an 8-year-old kid. Yeah. Nice.
Last question I have for you, David, is how fun is Friday night going to be for us watching Game 6?
Friday night's going to be amazing. It's interesting, Joey. I've watched it a lot. I've watched Game 6 a lot over the years. I have the box set from the World Series, Great Smith's Moments. I've seen it on MLB Network countless times. This is going to be the first time that I'm actually going to get a chance to watch it, even though it's virtual. Watch it with some buds and just enjoy and talk over it. And instead of paying such rapt attention to the announcers, right, wanting to hear every word that Ralph Kiner says and national feed Vin Scully, and you can kick back because the outcome, and you can enjoy shooting the crap with the friends and just oh my God, you remember this? And that again, the fun of baseball, right? That social sharing, right? Social convention that we all have together. It's amazing.
This is also going to be the first time I've watched it with anyone. I mean, I think my daughter watched the first couple innings with me once, and then she went in her room for a little bit, and then she came out and she looked up and she said, Daddy, is this going to take forever? And I said, well, it's going to take 4 hours, which seems like forever.
Yes.
And then she kind of looked at me like I was crazy, and she's like, but you know who wins, right? It's like, yeah, but I do it every year. I have that same box set, which includes Game 6 of the NLCS.
Right.
All 7 games of the World Series. Then there's a bonus disc.
Yep.
But this will be the first time I'm sharing this experience with any Mets fans. My girlfriend's going to be here.
Nice.
She's she's going out of her way to say what time so I can leave early from work, even if I have to skip a half day or whatever. By the way, we're kidding Jen's employer. She's not going to skip work. But
no one's ever skipped work for a baseball game. That's on record. It's official. Ever. Never happened.
All right. So I've shared this story real quick because I can't not tell this story now that you've said that. And I think you've heard this story before. My dad. So we're gonna bookend the show with stories about Dad.
Awesome.
So my dad was not a big baseball fan, and actually we didn't play catch until the year I wrote my book. So that was like the first time I remember actually having a catch with my dad. My dad was not a big baseball fan, but in 1980, I think it was 80 or 81, he called in sick. He said, hey, I can't make it in. I got a little bit of a chest cold. I'm going to, just try to sleep it off, soup it up, and I'll see you tomorrow. So the next day he goes into work, and his boss, he was a tool and die maker. I think at this point he was working for a company called Tools Inc. his boss said, "Hey, Jimmy, how you feeling?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm feeling good. Got it out of my system. Think I'm ready to go." His boss just kind of looked at him as if to say, like, "Is there anything else you want to tell me?" And Dad's like, "All right, well, I'll get to my bench and we'll get going." And his boss just dropped a newspaper, just dropped it on the bench. My dad looks at it, and this is not the sports section. This is the actual front page of the Milwaukee Sentinel or Journal. It's a picture of my dad holding a beer cup on opening day, 1980, the Sixto Lexicano game.
Oh, yeah.
Hit a walk-off grand slam.
Yeah.
And it says, local fan, ... And you can tell it's him. I'm going to actually later tonight, I'm going to post a picture of it.
Awesome.
I don't have the paper anymore, but I have a picture of the paper.
Right.
And my dad kind of looked at it, kind of looked at the boss. Boss kind of stares him down for a second and then just says, "Should have just asked off, Jimmy. I would have gave you the day off." Just like, so it's just one of those great things because we've all done it. I actually, I was a senior in high school when Benia signed.
Mm-hmm.
And, back then, no internet or anything. So I just had to rely on what I heard on SportsCenter the night before that said he's going to make his announcement tomorrow. One of the local sports reporter or sportscasters here named Mark Concannon broke the news. I was like, yes, we're going to win 6 World Series in the next 10 years. And that, by the way, spoiler alert, did not happen.
You sure?
Didn't happen. We didn't win. We haven't been back. We've been back. We just haven't won it yet. So
Right.
All right. Well, David, thank you for having a catch with me tonight. I could see us doing a volume 2 at some point. I had so much fun getting to see all your memorabilia, hearing about Dad, and just really had a great time tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe, for having me. And, remember, guys, greatest thing about baseball, besides the game itself, is sharing it. So if you ever have an opportunity to take a kid to a game, give somebody some baseball cards, a book, a piece of memorabilia, do it. I promise you the feeling you'll get. I just had a kid recently who we were able to give a whole bunch of stuff to, and this kid lit up. And for us, it was like nothing, but sharing that with just another person, seeing them light up the same way that you and I did when we were kids, it's an incredible feeling. Whether it's your own kids, someone else's, do it. Pass it on. Let's have a catch.
And I look forward to the day where you and I can actually go outside and have a catch of our own on that grass that you described from Shea Stadium back when you were a kid.
Deal. Can't wait,
All
my
right.
friend. All right.
So, again, thank you to David Rubin for being here tonight, having a catch with me. The next time you'll see us together will be Friday at 7:30 Central as we stream Game 6 of the 1986 World Series between the Red Sox and Mets. Next Tuesday, I'm having a catch with Jenny Russack from iHeartRadio.
Awesome.
So tune in then, and everyone have a great night.
Thanks, Joe. Be well, everyone.